So if you're watching this video, you most likely already know about the H1B registration process and the lottery that accompanies it. This year, they're starting on March 7th. They're running it through March 24th. As usual, 60,000 individuals with bachelor's degrees will be selected. And then, of course, the 20,000 select in the U.S. Masters cap. But if you're watching this video and you already know about that, you also know that the selection rate is abysmal. While the new registration process certainly made it easier to enter applicants in the registration, it's also led to a lot more applicants. You used to have to send an entire H1B application. Now that barrier is gone, and more employers are willing to try and enter individuals. So, with more people entering, there's just less likelihood that you'll be selected. And let's not hold our breath for immigration reform. In this video, I'll try to address some quick points about CAP exemption and how you might qualify for that. CAP exemption is something that is pretty hard to obtain usually. If you're a 501c3 nonprofit or C4 or C6 and you're affiliated with a higher ed institution, so think obviously university, depending on the affiliation agreement, you're going to potentially be CAP exempt there. But what's recently been changed due to rules that were pushed through during the waning days of the Biden administration, I shouldn't say pushed through, those rules are just finalized. Rulemaking takes a long time. The definition of research has changed a little bit. So those 501c3s and government organizations that are engaged in research, they have slightly widened what that means. And the main change comes in the form of language that they now say fundamental activity. That's what they need the research to be. The research must be a fundamental activity of your 501c3 nonprofit or nonprofit research organization or governmental research organization. And so that research can either be basic or applied, which is written out in the regulations. And fundamental activity, well, it basically means not the only thing that you're doing. And so it's always going to be a case by case basis. But if we can show, I think, credibly that, 33 to 40% of your activities are revolving around research, I think you can argue that's a fundamental activity. Maybe it depends on your mission statement, right? And we don't have to focus so heavily on the time spent. So everything's going to depend on the situation and the adjudicator that you get. But it's important to consider that as an employer. Do we know about any of these 501c3s, these research-driven organizations, and is there overlap with the people that I want to hire? Because if you can collaborate with one of these entities and they want to hire someone that you have working for you right now on OPT for 5 or 10 hours a week to do this research, well, then you can file a concurrent employment H1B and have them working for you for the rest of the work week and completely bypass the headache that comes with the H1B registration. Well, there's also been a change in the rules that says that if the applicant, if the beneficiary is doing work on behalf of one of these organizations, one of these research-driven organizations where research is a fundamental activity, and 50% of their duties are dedicated to that, they will also be CAP exempt. So what does that mean? Well, this might simplify the process. Instead of doing the two-step concurrent employment process, you might be able to say, all right, half of my employees' time is going to be dedicated to research with this entity, but the other half of the time, they're mine and they're directly employed by me. Now you have a lot more skin in the game. As you know, as an employer, and if you're watching this video, you know that STEM OPT folks only got about 3 bites at the apple, best case scenario, to get selected in the lottery. And regular OPT, you really only have 1 bite at that apple. And if the selection rate is less than 20%, the math does itself. It's not going to happen for everybody. Some folks get selected right away. Some folks never get selected. That's just the luck of the draw. So finding these CAP exemption possibilities becomes increasingly important. You have to start thinking outside of the box. How are you going to retain this talent? And it becomes a question of, is it worth it? Arguably, if you're watching this video, it probably is going to be, because it's not as simple as finding a U.S. worker to fill the role. If you could do that, you wouldn't be dealing with this nightmare of immigration. You know that talent in your field is limited and that you rely on the talent you can get through these visas, through STEM OPT. So what are some things that you can try to do if you're If your applicants aren't selected in the CAP, well, the easiest thing to do would realistically be you already have connections to one of these nonprofit research organizations, and maybe now you just need to make some introductions and go from there. Can you form your own 501c3 that's, has a fundamental activity that's basic or applied research? It's not out of the question, but I think when you're doing these applications, you want to keep in mind that USCIS is going to look for a history, I think, of performing that research. So you're going to want to be established. You're not going to want to just create a 501c3 and then a month later apply with two or three of your applicants say, yeah, they're going to do research for me. It's just not going to fly. But it's worth thinking, depending on the size of your organization and the scope of your plans long term, can I establish this? And that maybe it doesn't bear fruit this year, but next year we can start attracting talent this way. Because if you can guarantee individuals that, look, you can come work for me, you have to spend half your time doing this research, but you don't have to worry about the H1B cap. There's a lot of H1B applicants that understand the value in that. And so that can put you ahead of some of your competitors if you're able to offer basically a way around this arcane registration system. So that's how you should be thinking about it. Obviously, it all must be genuine. You can't just do it for the sake of creating a loophole for the H1B. But there are a lot of folks that I've talked to that are working in a space where this actually does line up with the missions of their organization and things that they've wanted to do anyway for a while. They've wanted to form these nonprofits and have wanted to engage in these research practices to drive their field along, whether it's in data or engineering or other scientific areas that this is their passion. This is starting to line up for them, and so over the course of a couple years, it might make sense for you to start building this base now because immigration reform is just increasingly unlikely under the current administration. And so it's worth giving it some thought. Again, the regular registration is March 7th to the 24th. If you'd like to consult on that, you know where to find us. And if you'd like to talk further about CAP exemption, feel free to book a consultation with me directly. I'll have a link to that in the description below. And of course, as always, keep an eye out for any further videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We would really appreciate that as we try to grow the channel.